Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Close to Broke. It's a pleasure to have you folks back. My name is Kieran, and today we find ourselves at the Commerce Casino once again. Appreciate you guys' support. It's been unbelievable. Quickly, want to point out a couple of little announcements as we head into the poker room today, and that is, we are going to be on the live stream at the Hustler Live Casino playing 1020, I believe, and that'll be this Wednesday. So not today, not tomorrow, but the following day on Wednesday. It'll be a pleasure to have you guys in. So if you guys happen to see this video and want to see my live poker play, check out the live stream. It'll be over on their YouTube site, not too hard to find. And as well, there's another massive announcement on Sunday. So just a few days away after that, we're going to be over at none other than the Horseshoe Casino in Baltimore. We're going to be playing fun games. It's going to be our meetup game. Almost 100 names have already signed up. So if you haven't had a chance, there's not unlimited tables, like I said. So make sure to sign up so you can reserve your seat and have a good time with me and Wolfgang. Let's get into today's session. Let's make some money. And if not, let's at least have some fun, have a good time. And we'll take running good though. That's always nice.
Well, we find ourselves yet again in the Commerce Casino. Today we're here on a weekday, which usually means not that much action, but that's never made me shy away from the battles. Today I'm going to be here for $1,500 as my starting stack. Surprisingly, there's only like 3 games going on right now, which is not that common for here. Usually we get significantly more, but it is what it is. We're going to be battling with what we've got in this very first hand. We are facing our foe from the couple sessions back, the OMC Slow Roller. Never fear, hopefully this is our chance to get it back. We look down at King 10 offsuit. I decide to raise from the cutoff to $35. The OMC Slow Roller on the button decides to make the call. We're going off to a flop that comes Ace 7 3 with 2 spades. The action starts off with me. I'm going to continue betting my entire range here. Half the size of the pot is what I end up betting for $35. I like to go maybe a little smaller, like a tad bit, betting a catch-all sizing, but I end up making it $35. My opponent pretty quickly calls, and the turn card comes the 8 of hearts. On this juncture, I'm going to continue telling the story that I'm representing an ace here, a strong one at that, so I end up betting $65. My opponent pretty quickly calls and ends up doing something that causes a little bit of pause in my head to think about something that I've seen in the past. My opponent calls and then pushes forward his chips as well as my chips, which usually indicates a couple of things. One, the pace of his call was really fast, which lends me to believe that he's fairly weak, or at least drawing. And when an opponent pushes his chips, there is a chance, this is not set in stone, and this is not like white magic 100% of the time going to work, but usually that does signify weakness as well, or at least somebody trying to catch a draw. So if the river bricks out in any sense, if there's no straight draws that complete, if there's no flush draws that complete, I'm considering betting it, even though I only have king high. The river comes a 7 of clubs. As you guys can see, it pairs the second card, but it doesn't change a lot to the board dynamics. It also doesn't complete any straights or any flushes. So when the action's on to me, on this really boring card on the river, I'm going to bet $150 representing what is more likely my range, going to be consisting of a pretty solid ace, ace king, ace queen, ace jack. Would be very comfortable going for 3 barrels of value on this run out. My opponent thinks about it before ending up throwing his hand away. Pretty happy to get that through there. Not sure if he had a flush draw or whatever he had, but that live tilt seemed like it really came in handy there. As you folks can see here, the scenery has changed. We have changed seats. Not only that, it's been over an hour and I ended up playing virtually no hands. I was super card dead and I ended up changing tables. Not only was I card dead, but even when I raised, people were just letting go of their hands. And that just is the story for today, is unbelievably super nitty, passive, slow play. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's here to make money, right? But definitely no action to be had in today's session. So we're going to have to push the action, press the aggression, and take advantage of some spots wherever we can find them. Like I said, several hours have passed, it feels like, by this point. We're on a new table. I'm getting pretty bored. There's 4 limps to me and I'm in the big blind. We look down at 3 deuce of hearts. Pretty easy check back, but I decide to play the highest variance route possible. Borderline spew. I make it $75 to go, isolating from this position. Obviously, I'm going to have a ton of great hands in this spot, and obviously this is going to be the very bottom of that range, maybe even below the bottom. This is like extra credit type range. The cutoff and the small blind make the calls, and we're going off to a flop that comes queen jack 3 with 2 spades. Another flush draw out there, a very connected board, super dynamic. deck, and for some reason I think it's a great idea to throw $80 into the ether, into the abyss. Probably never to see it back unless I get super lucky on a run out. Both players decide to make the call, and by this point I'm pretty over the hand, especially when the turn card comes the 8 of clubs. This now confirms my suspicions, as there's a ton of straight draws out there, and that is one of the turn cards that adds to those straight draws equity by giving them the virtual nuts here, if I'm not mistaken. But when that's the case, I decide to check it over and give up at this point. The cutoff decides to bet $250. The small blind calls, and I'm done with this hand here. We've donated enough into this pot, so I end up making the fold. The river comes out an ace. Surprisingly, both of these players decide to check it through. The cutoff shows queen 8 of hearts, so he turned 2 pair. And the small blind shows king jack with a flush draw as well as middling pair. Somehow they didn't get any more money in the middle. They played the smallest possible with 2 massive hands, and that just goes to show you how super passive and super slow today's session has been. Some time has passed before we look down in a really advantageous situation, as we see pocket queens here from the hijack. I end up raising to $35. The cutoff decides to make the call. The big blind makes a call, and we're going off to a flop that comes 10-7-4 rainbow. Really nice board texture to have a bet of a larger sizing or a check. And in this instance, I decide to check to allow my super passive opponents to hopefully try to take a stab at it and possibly get them to put money in the middle and give him an incentive to try to steal the pot from me. The cutoff takes the bait as he decides to bet out $100. This is just the dream come true, it seems like. We finally get some action, and I end up making the call, and the turn card comes a not so great one, as it comes a king of diamonds. Does bring a backdoor flush draw, adds a straight draw out there, and puts another over to my pocket pair. Not outstanding, but can't change anything of the plans here. It'd be ridiculous to lead out here. So I decide to check it. My opponent checks it back. The river comes a total brick, doesn't change anything to the board texture. This is pretty outstanding, as I doubt my opponent has any kings in his range. What's more than likely is my opponent has some kind of 10, whether that's ace 10 or jack 10. There is still a possibility that my opponent will call me on my river size bet. So I end up betting fairly small here, targeting again a middling pair. I make it $125, as everybody complains when I go too polar here, and they're very right. Sometimes I bet too big and lose out on some equity and lose out on some value. So this is a spot where I decide to bet a little smaller and entice my opponent to call. He thinks about it for quite some time before eventually making the fold. Sadly, can't get any more action here. Like I said, we're going to be pulling teeth to try to get any value in any of these spots where we're not coolering somebody with the first nuts versus second nuts. Shortly after, we look down in the low jack at ace queen offsuit. I decide to make it $35. The hijack, which is the opponent from the last hand, makes the call. The big blind makes a call as well. We're going off three-handed yet again to another flop that comes king 10-8 with 3 diamonds. Checking our hand here, and we do hold the ace of diamonds, which is quite wonderful. We can freely bet at this with all the equity we have. We have a gut shot to the nut straight. We have an over, and we have a big flush draw, the very nuts flush draw. I decide to c-bet here for a larger sizing of $65. My opponent on the hijack decides to make the call. The blinds fold. We're going off to a turn card that comes the 7 of diamonds. So we make the nut flush here. The only thing we're losing to at this point is a straight flush, of course. So effectively we have the second nuts, but at this juncture I'm feeling pretty confident in my hand. I feel so confident here that I think that most of the times I end up losing value by betting really massive here. It's just really hard to target specific hands and go 3 streets with my exact holding. I'd have to be coolering somebody, or more than likely, I'm going to allow my opponent with the queen or the jack of diamonds to make a hero fold on the 3rd street. So I'd rather play this as a check and allow him to bluff at it. So I end up making the check. My opponent does not take the bait. He checks it back. And we're going off to a river that changes the dynamics a little bit, as it comes the 8 of clubs pairing the board. Again, I'm not the one to be scared of many things, and this river isn't going to change much of my plans. My plan was to go for 2 streets of value. That's not changing. I end up betting $185. My opponent is obviously disgruntled, friendly about it, but he's not happy with the run out. He ends up making the call. I show my ace queen with the ace of diamonds. He shakes his head and mucks. Not sure what he had exactly, possibly the 2nd or 3rd nut flush. It's unfortunate for him. We're going to take down this pot and slowly head our way into Profitville.
Alrighty, usually I tell you guys all the time the same thing. Hey, there's a mid-session update. I gotta be quick. I gotta go back to the table. But today is the polar opposite, as we are playing in probably the worst game we've ever played on the vlog. Full with a ton of pros, super passive pre-flop, a lot of limping. I isolate, they fold or they call. I'm not trying to do anything crazy, playing fairly exploitative, just trying to get myself as much money as I can. Anyways, Like I said, usually I'm like, oh, I got to get in a rush. I got to get out to the game, but the game is so bad that let's just sit around here until eventually we can go back. I'm going to hit the gift shop, get some water, and then I'll head back into the game. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys always. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's hop back into the session slowly. Let's hope for a better turnaround. Really boring otherwise.
Like I said, to this point, it's been super passive, and my goal is to spice up the action. We've got a vlog to record. We've got some people to entertain, and I've got some action to press. In this following hand, the button raised at $30. I looked on a king 8 of clubs here from the big blind. I end up making the call. We're going off to a flop that comes queen 9 4 with 2 diamonds and a club. We flop a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, an over, and a whole lot of nothing really. I end up checking to continue playing in flow. My opponent bets $45, which is a little bit on the larger sizing, so there is some little bit of worry there. But look, this has never stopped me before. Not going to stop me today. I've got some action to really unload here. I end up raising to $150. I can obviously have a ton of combo draws here, some value, some sets. A lot of hands here can definitely make sense in my range. And like I said, aggression just tends to work out for me, it feels like. My opponent pretty quickly makes a call. So looking to improve or catch some more equity. The turn card comes, not that, as it comes with 3 hearts. This doesn't change very much the board texture at all. And if I was bluffing, which I am, I should continue bluffing. If I had value, which I don't, I continue betting anyways. So at this juncture, I want to bet a little more than half pot. So I end up making it $275. My opponent thinks about it for like 20 seconds before making the call. So on this river, I'm thinking to myself, more than likely, I'd like to see a diamond peel off so we can represent that. Or maybe even catching some form of a scare card, like a straight card. And the river comes an interesting one as it comes the 4 of diamonds, pairing the bottom card, but bringing the flush draw in. When the action starts off with me, I didn't get all the way to this point with king high to give up. And this is specifically the worst hand I'm going to have getting to this river. So it's time to bluff because we've kind of got to. After a little bit of thinking, I decide $700 is the proper price of poker. Again, going nearly 80% of the pot here, a really big bluff. This is a massive pot and can definitely dictate how my session is going to go. If my opponent is able to snuff this out, I'm going to be looking like a fool. But like I've always said, if you're not getting caught bluffing, you're probably not bluffing often enough. My opponent is deep into the tank for probably over 2 minutes before eventually making the fold. I am super happy. The sweat is off. I am jubilant, I guess is the word I'd like to use there. Finally able to get a really nice bluff through. Unlucky for that opponent, as we did have king high, but he will live to fight another day, as will I. Today I've been isolating quite a bit, but have either made a small c-bet on the flop that gets through, or had to give up pretty much instantly because the flops haven't been hitting us. Well, this next hand is an example of one of those instances, as the cutoff and the small blind limp. We're in the big blind with 5-3 of hearts. There's been a lot of limping going on, so it's my turn to isolate once again. $55 to go is the price of poker. The cutoff makes a call. We're going off to a flop needing a great deal of help considering we only have 5 high. The flop does not come like that, as it comes jack 10 4. Not a whole lot to report on this flop besides the fact that I'm throwing $75 into outer space, it feels like. My opponent pretty quickly makes a call. Luckily, the turn card comes a really, really interesting one as it comes the ace of spades. This now improves my range, or at least my perceived range. I should be having a ton of hands that now make a strong hand here on the turn. Whether I have king, queen, or ace X, most of my bluffs or c-bets now improve. So that's not going to stop me from betting now as my range has improved. I make it $250. My opponent pretty quickly makes the call. And we're going off to a river that comes the ace of clubs. This is a really bad river as now the top card pairs. And I'm not in the business of bluffing at really bad spots to bluff at, or at least not when they are this nasty. I end up checking it over to my opponent, who decides to bet $415. In my head, I know immediately that he's probably bluffing with the best hand. It's unfortunate when this happens, but he shouldn't ever have a real, bet on the river. And if he does, he's probably misplaying his hand. I end up folding, showing 5 high to try to spice his table up, or at least get an image of a maniac or something. And my opponent proudly shows 10-8 offsuit, so he's going to peel with 10 high, which is awesome because I have 5 high, I guess. And yep, he's bluffing with the best hand, obviously. Unfortunate that we just could not find any reasonable river. If the river comes any other picture card, I'm pretty happy to continue my story and betting, but on a board pairing card, it's just hard to continue telling any type of credible story. Hats off to him, though. He completely owned me, Even if he did bluff with the best hand, in theory, he was still bluffing, and I would have folded a ton of better hands. Good on you, sir. In this very last hand, the table has agreed to start a blind raise. I've let them know pretty quickly that my time here is up. I've had enough of the zero action, so I'm pretty much playing this very last hand, and luckily for us, it's a pretty decent one. Early position decides to limp for $20. We look down at ace 3 of diamonds. Gonna go ahead and isolate here to 80 bucks as there is a blind raise for 20 bucks. Only the blind raiser decides to make the call. We're going off to a flop. Thankfully, we see a 3 in the window, giving us some form of equity, followed by not 1, but 2 aces. The flop comes ace, ace 3, bingo. I mean, that's his name-o, right? The opposition decides to check it over to me, and I've absolutely destroyed this board. It's hard to get a ton of value here, but I don't want to not bet. I'd like to at least bet something. So I bet $10. That is the minimum I can bet. My opponent laughs and scoffs at it and decides to make the call. Luckily for us, we at least have our little fishy hooked on for the first juncture of this hand. The turn card comes a king of spades, adding a backdoor flush draw now. When he checks it over to me, it's time to bet a reasonable sizing or something realistic here. I make it 60. Looking to go 20 to 30% here. My opponent decides to pretty quickly make the call. We're going off to a river, and I know that I'm going to bomb pretty much anything that comes on the river. And luckily, the river comes at jack of spades. So this now brings in the backdoor flush draw, which is outstanding. Very credible for my opponent to have that. It does bring in maybe if he had a hand like jacks, I can definitely see him have something like that and just peeling the big blind. So when that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and bet massive here. Either he's going to fold or he's going to call. I don't think he's going to be hero calling with like 7s or 6s here on this river if I bet, you know, small. So I make a big sizing of 325. Going over the size of the pot, my opponent thinks about it for a very brief moment before making the call. That's an outstanding situation. We show our hand. Ace 3. We let him know right away that we have ace 3, and he is in disbelief as to the way I played it, I suppose. We take down the very last hand of the night in a very eventful fashion. Happy to finally get a hand pushed in our direction, and that's going to close it out for today's fairly uneventful session. Happy to make the most of it. Happy to get out of here alive, and more importantly, we've got to throw it over to me in the parking lot to let you guys know how the session went.
Okay everyone, so man, was that the most uneventful session we've ever played in poker? Quite possibly it was, but there was a couple of fun hands, the overbet at the end there, as well as the big bluff with king 8 of clubs. Still worth the watch, but like I say at the end of these kind of sessions, I want to show the reality of playing poker. I'm going to be honest with you guys, even I'm kind of blown away at how slow games can be in LA. Even at my favorite casino, even at Commerce, I swear by the action here, it can still be super slow and fairly uneventful. So it is what it is. We'll get to the numbers in a second, but that's enough of me complaining. There's some lighter note things that I want to tell you guys about just briefly. Again, I want to thank you guys all dearly from the bottom of my heart for constantly supporting the videos. Close to Broke is useless without you guys, so I thank you guys so much for building what is the best community on YouTube by far for the poker vlogs. It feels like that's the case at least. And secondly, just wanted to add to what I said earlier. You guys are going to be in Baltimore, Maryland. We're going to be at the Horseshoe on April 24th. Make sure to stop by, show some love. We're going to be having a great time. Every 20 minutes, there's $300 given away for the high hand. It's going to be a great atmosphere, a ton of action. Going to be playing 2-3 blinds or something. So it should be a good time. We were into today's game for $1,700 and out for $2,350. So it's a profit of $650. Slow game. It is what it is. We'll take what we can get. And today what we can get was a small profit of 65 big blinds. I love you guys dearly. Have a great day. And like I said, be expecting a ton of great things for Close to Broke as time is to come. I appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. Stay happy, stay healthy. More importantly, run good to the tables, y'all. Deuces.